So thank you very much to Dario and the Next team for having us here today. It's been a great program, and I know we've all learned so much. And what we've learned today is very technical, and we've learned a lot about digital. But Marcus and I, this is Marcus West, he's joining me here. We're going to take a little different approach because we want to talk about articulating the science like a pro. And what that means to us is a little bit different. We're going to focus on the softer skills. We're going to focus on training. I'm going to focus on how we actually empower our MSLs, how we actually get them to engage. And then Marcus is going to wonderfully walk us through the ability to present themselves to MSLs, how they're actually going to show intention in what they do, and how they're also going, to brand themselves. And what we actually wanted to draw from particularly was our experience, both what we see constantly within industry and what Marcus also sees very often when he's consulting. And from our perspective, we really want to talk about the key areas that we think are going to be extremely impactful for us if we're going to help the MSLs be able to better articulate what we're doing. So training, we've talked about, there's so many wonderful tools out there. There's so many wonderful training programs. But let's be honest, for the sales reps, they get a much better experience in my perspective. The MSLs, on the other hand, as someone that was trained in this sort of school of thought, was we're given slide decks, we're given manuscripts, and we're sent on our way, and good luck. And you're going to do an amazing job. And I'm probably thinking there's a few people in here that have been through that school. The problem is, though, is in the past 2 years, we've all learned to learn in a different way. Every single one of us has become podcast consumers. We use YouTube. We use many different modes of learning. Our MSLs, on the other hand, slide decks and manuscripts. This is not the way to do it. And you're thinking to yourself, I'm not a company that has a lot of money. I'm small to mid-sized pharma. I'm a startup. That's my case. I don't have the money to do this because I got to make great training materials for my doctors. Well, guess what? Why not make it so that your materials that you use are interactive, you have different animations, you're using infographics, you're using things that are engaging and are going to basically help support the multimodal way in which our clinicians are going to be interacting with for our MSLs. Why not have them train on these materials, use these to learn themselves, and then take these to the customer, not just create one bucket and create another bucket. Because the other thing is, once you've actually done this training, you need to empower the MSL. And what do we constantly do with the sales rep? We do actual scenario, like playing different scenarios, role playing. MSLs, we don't do this. We don't think this is important. But the reality of it is, the MSL needs to be able to talk this science through. They need to see that all these great things that we've developed for them are in fact going to be something they can use easily and readily with the customer. So again, we need to be able to get them ready to do that, to engage. Take on top of that, the MSLs don't always have the skills to actually elicit the information that they need. The MSLs are not given any sort of insight on how to gather insights. They can pick up lots of facts, and we put that all in our CLMs, our CRMs. We use all these different programs to be able to look at the information they're gathering, but it's just facts. We need to get to the how, the why, the when. Why does the doctor do what they do? And the way you do that is you basically need to train them what is an insight. So these are very important because it'll allow the conversation to be richer and it'll allow them to get more information. So now you've given them the tools, you've given them great infographics, you've given them great digital assets, you've given them, basically this training to actually have these rich conversations. Now you're going to set them out to engage. When you set them out to engage, I'm in global, we tend to give them these really clunky systems that work how we want it to work, but we don't think about how they need to work. So rule number one, from what we see over and over again, map this out with your MSLs. Map out what they might use in the first engagement. Map out how they're actually going to actually progress with the conversations with the customers. And use these multiple types of learning tools when the MSL is in front of the actual customer. The other point that we often neglect, and this is really, really key, is that we are still in a space where we are actually interacting with our customers, both in the live space, which is very difficult, we know that, and hopefully Marcus will give us some great tips on how to do that. But we also have to work in the Zoom space still. We are not quite back 100% to the person-to-person space. We have to still do this sort of virtual engagement. And that, too, is another set of skills that we have not yet necessarily prepared our teams for. I have been with MSLs and working with them and seeing how they're actually working online. They're still not using the cameras correctly. They're still not using good lighting. They're not standing up, creating themselves, bringing that brand, bringing themselves to this meeting. We have to work on these things. We assume because our MSLs are great at science and they're scientists, they're medics, we're not preparing them like we do our sales reps for these softer skills and for these much more critical ways that they can actually connect with our customers and actually walk away with really good insights and really strong abilities to connect and give the customer what they need. So with that said, I've kind of given you the background from a technical perspective. I want Marcus to now please walk us through the finesse of being a good MSL.
Thanks. Thanks very much, Michelle. Much appreciated. And yeah, I think COVID has been very interesting in medical affairs. I've been coaching MSLs in workshops and in mentoring scenarios for the last 3 years. But I've worked coaching people to present for more than 30 years, mainly people in television and in politics and in the corporate world. But one thing that I've noticed a lot during the COVID period is how many epidemiologists have gone from working in a laboratory to being thrust onto the 6 p.m. news. And it's been interesting for a range of different reasons. Firstly, they've had to take long, complex messages and simplify them and make them tight and punchy and engaging, because that's the way that television works. And secondly, they've had to think about how they look to the camera, how they think about the person they're talking to, and all that other stuff. Not unlike we do when we do remote calls. How we set up our call, what's the lighting like, what's the sound like. And so it has meant that these people who have not really a background that sets them up to be compelling public speakers, they're academics with their doctorates, PhDs, etc., suddenly need to work out, well, I really need to take this quite dry, complex material and make it a little more compelling, without, of course, wavering from the scientific truths. So, what are some points that we can take away? Firstly, on presenting, I think we need to think about the stories that we tell, because that's the way that we talk in every other capacity, except often at work. Whenever we meet with friends or family, we always talk in stories. We share things that happened, experiences, and then we get into the work context and suddenly it becomes dry dot points. So think about story and think about how your stories tell the sort of person that you are and the sort of professional that you are. The second thing is body language. Enormously powerful. Some people say that body language is up to 70% of how we perceive an individual to be. If I was to say to you, Emmanuel Macron and Barack Obama, both of them have a very light, easy movement. It's quite effortless. All right? They're not, even though they are quite literally carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders, it doesn't seem that way. Things seem quite easy for them. And I think thinking about how we come across and how we carry ourselves is enormously important for the impact that we have on other people. Thirdly, voice. I think it's a great exercise to listen to ourselves back. If we've got a little elevator pitch that we're doing, or maybe we've got a speech that we're doing, recording ourselves and listening to the inflection, the use of pause, the expressiveness. And I think even just understanding and hearing that, even though it's not a terribly pleasant experience, helps to build energy and build engagement, and critically allows that sort of passion to come through in our voice about what we're talking about. Intention. This is really important. I think, we talk about call planning in the sales context, but it's equally important for MSLs. What am I trying to achieve in this 20-minute conversation that I'm having with a KOL? What is achievable in this window of time? We've heard the expression of salespeople to turn up and throw up, and I believe the equivalent in the MSL space is the data dump. So, how can we take that and move it over here and go, all right, well, this is all I can get through in this period of time? Because in this interaction, I need to let this interaction breathe. There needs to be an exchange not only of information, but of energy. And whenever I coach sales, I always talk about the idea that great selling is like a date. All right, you need to be really good at listening, and you need to pay attention and give eye contact, and you need to let those quiet moments just sit for a little bit. It's a really nice analogy. It works on a range of different levels. So think about your audience. That's the most important thing. In the communication triangle, I have myself, I have my story, but the most important thing is that I have my audience. And he or she, must understand. They must grasp what I'm on about. And if they don't, then I haven't done my job. I haven't prepared that content quite right. Perhaps I haven't delivered it in the right way. What is the goal for my meeting, and what kind of things do I have? Michelle mentioned a range of collateral that could be brought. And if I only have 20 minutes, then how much can I realistically make my way through? And in regard to the skills that are needed in that interaction, just 3 simple ones here. How do I start the interaction so that I immediately arrest the attention of the person that I'm talking to? What's my content hook to suddenly grab their attention, take them out of their own minds and draw them into the interaction? How good am I at asking questions? When the KOL says to me, I've just got this little, problem with that, that's the most important part in the whole interaction, because they're raising the concern that they're thinking about. And if you can manage that really well, that's incredibly powerful. And also, what do I believe are my customers' key drivers? How well do I know what my customer wants, what interests them, what their passion is? And I think this is enormously important. Understanding personality types is so important. Some people are driven by numbers. Some people are driven by purpose, the emotion, by helping people. What is the driver for this particular KOL? And how do I just pivot slightly my content to ensure that it's meeting them where they're at? Lastly, brand. I think this is a very interesting question. I mean, the way that I'm seeing things currently is that sales teams seem to be going through a period of contraction. MSL teams, everywhere I look, are growing. All right? People want the best information possible from the leading source possible. And so MSL teams are growing, but of course, as they grow, how do we create structures and process to ensure that if I have an MSL team of 50 MSLs, that they're all consistently demonstrating a range of different behaviours? That's the challenge. And also, I think, being an ambassador for medicine, an ambassador for the brand, and connecting with purpose. I think this is so important. What are these MSLs about? Why are they doing it? And if they can connect to that, then I think that will elevate the energy, the passion, and the enthusiasm of their engagement considerably. Just one last thing I want you to think about as I close. This idea of personal brand. I want you to think about 2 adjectives that you think, 2 descriptors for yourself that you would like your clients and your colleagues to have in their mind when they think about what you're like. Oh yes, Emma, she is blah and blah. Because those 2 words, that really is all we have. In Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink, talks about the idea of capturing a thin slice of a person. That's what most people get of us, a thin slice, a moment. And so if we're clear on what those qualities are, our best two qualities that we want to aspire to and deliver on and embody in the stories that we tell, the way we use our voice and the way we carry ourselves, that should be the goal. Because if we can do that really clearly, it creates a strong personal and professional brand that's indelible in the mind of those we engage with.
So in closing, we want you to reconsider how we train our MSLs. We hope that we've made that clear. We want you to empower the MSLs. Don't just push them out the door and hope they do a good job. You got to work at it. And engagement, you've just heard many top tips on how we can be better at presenting, how we can have better intention, and most importantly, how the MSLs will really represent our brand in the best way. Thank you very much.